Hello! I would be very pleased if you would like the video. Subscribe so you don't miss new videos every day that will help you relax. I'm also curious where you are listening to me from and what time it is now. Write it in the comments. Enjoy watching! The first light of dawn filtered through the thick wooden shutters of Bjorn's longhouse, casting slanted beams across the packed dirt floor. The scent of smoke, wood, and the faint tang of salt from the nearby fjord lingered in the air. Bjorn stirred beneath a heavy woolen blanket, his muscles aching from yesterday's labor and the constant training that defined the life of a Viking warrior. Outside, the village of Skjoldheim began to awaken. Smoke rose in thin spirals from other longhouses, and the low murmur of voices mingled with the calls of roosters and the bleating of goats. Bjorn swung his legs over the edge of the bed, bare feet meeting the cold floor. He rubbed the sleep from his eyes and adjusted the leather belt around his waist, where a small knife and a whetstone were fastened. Today would be like most days, yet no 2 days were ever truly alike in the north. Life demanded readiness, whether for labor, raids, or defending the village from rival clans. He stepped outside into the crisp morning air, inhaling the scent of pine and damp earth. The fjord glimmered under the rising sun, its waves lapping gently against the wooden docks where fishing boats bobbed. Villagers were already stirring, children chasing each other with sticks, women tending fires, and men hauling logs or sharpening axes. Bjorn nodded to his friend Eric, who was stacking bundles of firewood, their eyes meeting in a silent acknowledgement of the day's duties. Breakfast was a simple affair. Bjorn sat on a rough-hewn bench beside the central hearth, breaking dark rye bread into pieces and dipping it into a thick porridge made from oats and goat milk. He ate quickly, mindful of the tasks ahead. Each mouthful fortified him not just for physical labor but for the constant mental vigilance required of a warrior. Even in the quiet moments of eating, one could not afford to relax completely. Even in the quiet moments of eating, one could not afford to relax completely. Raiders could strike at any time, and the harsh northern climate tested the body and spirit alike. After breakfast, Bjorn fetched his tools and joined the other men at the shipyard. The longship, newly constructed and gleaming with fresh tar and polished planks, awaited its final preparations. Every nail, every rope, and every carved dragonhead held significance. These vessels were the heart of Viking power, allowing men like Bjorn to traverse oceans, rivers, and fjords with the speed and ferocity of the sea itself. Today, the work was routine maintenance, checking the hull, securing the oars, and inspecting the sail for tiers. Still, there was an electric hum of anticipation in the air, as though the ship itself felt the pull of distant horizons and unknown adventures. By mid-morning, the village elders gathered in the longhouse to discuss trade, disputes, and news from other settlements. Bjorn, though young, was often present, listening intently. Stories of skirmishes with rival clans, the arrival of foreign traders, or sightings of strange ships across the fjord were shared with measured gravity. Each tale carried lessons about courage, strategy, and the delicate balance between diplomacy and strength. After the meeting, Bjorn took to the fields, wielding his axe to chop timber for repairs and fuel. His muscles burned with effort, the rhythm of the work almost meditative. Sweat mingled with the morning mist on his skin, and he welcomed the sting. It reminded him that he was alive, that he was strong, and that he was ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. From the edges of the forest came the distant cry of wolves, a reminder that the wild was never far from civilization, and that vigilance was as important in daily labor as it was in battle. By midday, the scent of cooking fires drifted through the village. Bjorn joined the others for a communal meal of salted fish, boiled root vegetables, and hard cheese. Conversation was lively but respectful, with laughter echoing off the wooden walls and smoke curling lazily toward the rafters. Meals were not just sustenance but a reaffirmation of bonds, family, friendship, and loyalty to the clan. Bjorn listened to tales of recent raids, the exploits of seasoned warriors, and the wisdom of the elders. Each story was a thread in the tapestry of Viking life, connecting the present with the legacy of ancestors whose spirits lingered in every stone, tree, and wave. As the sun climbed higher, Bjorn prepared for his afternoon training. Sword in hand, he sparred with Eric and the other young warriors, practicing strikes, blocks, and maneuvers honed over years of disciplined repetition. Their movements were precise, almost ritualistic, a dance of strength, strategy, and instinct. The clang of steel on steel rang across the village, a sound as familiar as the wind through the pines. Bjorn's mind sharpened with every clash, every step, every breath. For in the life of a Viking, survival depended not just on skill but on the ability to anticipate, react, and endure. The afternoon sun warmed Bjorn's back as he strode toward the edge of the forest, bow and quiver slung over his shoulder. The villagers rarely ventured far into the wild, but hunting was a vital skill. Deer tracks crisscrossed the soft soil, and the scent of pine mingled with damp earth. Bjorn moved silently, ears straining for any rustle, eyes scanning for movement. Every step demanded focus, for in these woods, danger came not only from wild animals but from rival clans seeking prey or plunder. Bjorn's hand hovered over an arrow as he spotted a young stag grazing near a thicket. He crouched behind a fallen log, muscles coiled like a spring. The wind shifted, carrying his scent toward the animal, and the stag lifted its head, nostrils flaring. Time seemed to stretch as Bjorn drew the bowstring, each heartbeat loud in his ears. Then, with a practiced release, the arrow flew, striking true. The stag stumbled, and Bjorn approached cautiously, knowing that respect for the creature was as important as the hunt itself. With the game secured, Bjorn gathered herbs and edible roots along the forest floor, mindful of which plants were safe. These simple skills ensured survival in harsh winters, when fields lay barren and the fjord froze over. As he worked, he listened to the distant call of seabirds, a reminder that the ocean was never far. The village depended on the bounty of both land and sea, and each trip into the forest was a lesson in patience, endurance, and the quiet observation of nature's rhythms. Returning to the fjord, Bjorn helped launch a small fishing boat into the lapping waves. Nets were cast with precision, ropes coiling neatly on the deck. The fjord shimmered under the late afternoon sun, reflecting the clouds in a silver mirror. Fishing was as much a test of skill as hunting. Currents could sweep nets away, and sudden storms could transform the calm waters into a perilous trap. Bjorn moved with practiced ease, muscles remembering years of motion, every action honed for survival and sustenance. By early evening, the boat returned to the dock heavy with fish, a testament to skill and luck. Villagers greeted him with nods and quiet admiration, for every successful haul strengthened the clan. Bjorn carried the fish to the central longhouse, where women and elders began preparing the evening meal. He washed his hands in the cold fjord water, the chill biting pleasantly against his sun-warmed skin. For a moment, he paused, breathing in the salt and pine, the simple satisfaction of a day spent in harmony with the land and sea. The sun dipped low, painting the fjord in hues of gold and crimson. Bjorn returned to the village, carrying the day's hunt and the weight of satisfaction. Smoke curled from the longhouse chimneys, mingling with the scent of cooking fish. Villagers moved with calm efficiency, tending fires, mending nets, and preparing the evening meal. The air was filled with quiet chatter and the soft clatter of tools, a rhythm that marked the end of labor. As night fell, torches lit the longhouse's entrance, casting flickering shadows on wooden walls. Families gathered around the central hearth, flames reflecting in eager eyes. Bjorn washed in cold water, scrubbing dirt and sweat from his skin. He then joined the others, sharing bread, cheese, and the fish he had caught. Conversation flowed easily, punctuated by laughter. In these moments, the bond between clan members felt strongest, the trials of the day melting into warmth and camaraderie. The elders began to tell tales of distant lands, of raids and battles, of gods and ancestors. Bjorn listened intently, imagining each scene as if he were there. The stories were not mere entertainment. They were lessons in courage, loyalty, and honor. The crackling fire punctuated each tale, shadows dancing on the walls as young warriors absorbed wisdom and young children learned the rhythm of their heritage. For a Viking, history and myth were inseparable, guiding both heart and hand. Bjorn's mind wandered to the horizon beyond the fjord, imagining voyages yet to come. He envisioned longships slicing through icy waters, carrying men like him to unknown shores. The thrill of adventure mingled with responsibility, the duty to protect his clan pressing alongside desire for glory. Each tale around the fire was a reminder. Strength and skill must be tempered with wisdom, courage with restraint. Night deepened, but the fire kept the village alive, a beacon against darkness and uncertainty. The village settled into quiet, the only sounds the crackling of fires and the distant lapping of waves against the docks. Bjorn rose to take his turn on night watch, stepping into the cool air with bow in hand. Shadows stretched long across the village, trees whispering secrets in the wind. Every rustle made him tense. Vigilance was constant, even in familiar surroundings. The safety of his clan depended on alert eyes and steady hands. Walking along the perimeter, Bjorn's senses were heightened. He scanned the darkened fjord, where moonlight danced on rippling waters. The night carried both danger and opportunity. Rival clans could strike, but the sea also promised distant lands, trade, and glory. Bjorn's heart beat steadily as he imagined voyages across icy waves, longships cutting through storm-tossed waters toward foreign shores filled with unknown riches and challenges. Minutes stretched into hours. Bjorn leaned against a post, bow at the ready, eyes following shadows that shifted with the breeze. Thoughts drifted to ancestors, their courage echoing through the ages. He pictured raids recounted by the elders, each one a lesson in cunning, strategy, and honor. Though he had not yet sailed far, the stories filled him with anticipation, a sense of destiny. The night seemed endless, but he remained patient, knowing that the dawn would soon return light and purpose. By the time the first pale streaks of morning touched the horizon, Bjorn's shift ended. He returned to the longhouse, body weary but mind alert. Others stirred, preparing for the new day's labors. Bjorn lay on his mat, staring at the wooden beams above. Dreams of the sea mingled with visions of battles, distant lands, and the roar of waves against the hull of the longship. Even in rest, a Viking's spirit could not escape the call of adventure, the relentless pull of life beyond the fjord. The first light of morning spilled over the fjord, turning the waters to molten gold. Bjorn rose with renewed energy, muscles still sore from yesterday's labor and night watch. Today felt different. A quiet anticipation hung in the air. Rumors of distant lands had reached the village, and whispers of a potential voyage stirred excitement among the young warriors. Bjorn's heart thumped with the promise of adventure, yet tempered with the responsibility to his clan. He helped load provisions onto the longship, barrels of salted fish, bundles of dried meat, and tightly wrapped cloths of wool. Every rope and plank was inspected, polished, and secured. The elders watched silently, nodding approval. The ship was more than a vessel. It was the embodiment of skill, preparation, and courage. Bjorn ran his hands along the smooth hull, imagining the waves it would soon cut, the distant shores it would reach, and the stories it would carry home. The crew gathered, shields strapped to their backs, swords and axes ready. Bjorn felt the camaraderie that bound men together in both work and battle. Each man understood the risks, storms, rival clans, or hostile lands, but also the glory and wealth that awaited those bold enough to venture forth. The longship rocked gently as it was pushed into the fjord, its dragon head gleaming in the sun, a symbol of the clan's strength and resolve. Bjorn took his place among the rowers, the familiar rhythm of oars dipping into the water grounding him. The fjord widened before them, and the horizon beckoned. Seagulls wheeled above, their cries mingling with the splash of oars and the wind in the sail. Every sense was alive, the salt on his lips, the spray of the waves, the tension of muscles ready for exertion. In that moment, Bjorn felt truly alive, a Viking poised between the known safety of home and the limitless possibilities of the world beyond. As the longship gained speed, Bjorn gazed back at the village, the fires and chimneys shrinking in the distance. He carried with him not only provisions but the hopes and trust of his people. Ahead lay challenges, battles, and wonders yet unseen. Every stroke of the oar was a step into legend, a continuation of the stories told by elders around the fire. With determination and courage, Bjorn embraced the uncertainty, ready to write his own chapter in the saga of his clan. The morning breeze had been gentle, but by midday, dark clouds gathered on the horizon. The fjord's calm waters grew restless, waves slapping against the longship with increasing force. Bjorn tightened his grip on the oar, muscles straining as the wind picked up. The men exchanged tense glances, knowing that even experienced Vikings could be humbled by the northern seas. Every creak of timber and flap of a sail reminded them that nature demanded respect. Rain began to fall in heavy sheets, drumming against the deck and stinging exposed skin. The longship pitched and rolled, oars dipping unevenly into churning waters. Bjorn's heart raced, but fear had no place in a warrior's mind. He shouted commands to synchronize the rowers, keeping their rhythm despite the storm's chaos. Lightning flashed, illuminating the panicked faces of gulls caught in the gale. The roar of thunder mingled with the pounding waves, a symphony of nature's raw power. Minutes felt like hours as they battled the storm. Bjorn's clothes clung to his skin, soaked and heavy. Yet his resolve did not waver. He scanned the horizon, watching for rocks or sudden currents, aware that one mistake could shatter the longship. The men's trust in each other became their lifeline. Every coordinated stroke of the oar, every quick adjustment of sail or shield, was a small victory against the sea's fury. Survival depended not just on strength but on skill, timing, and unity. By evening, the storm began to relent, leaving a sky streaked with orange and violet. The longship had taken on water, but the vessel remained intact, a testament to its builders and the crew's perseverance. Bjorn sat heavily on the deck, chest heaving, hair plastered to his face. Despite exhaustion, a thrill ran through him. The storm had tested their limits, forged their courage, and reminded them why the sea demanded both respect and mastery. As night fell, the crew set up watch rotations, keeping a vigilant eye on the dark waves. Bjorn leaned against the mast, staring at the stars reflected on the calm surface of the fjord beyond the storm. Tales of legendary voyages and heroic deeds filled his thoughts. He knew that tomorrow would bring new challenges, yet the night offered a quiet moment to absorb the lessons of the storm: bravery, endurance, and the unbreakable bond of men united against the wild. At first light, Bjorn spotted land rising from the mist. The unfamiliar coastline stretched before them, cliffs dotted with strange trees and beaches of pale sand. The longship glided closer, oars slicing through calm waters after the storm. The crew's chatter was hushed, replaced by the anticipation of the unknown. Every Viking knew that foreign lands promised both danger and opportunity, and today would test their courage in new ways. The ship grounded on a gentle shore, sand crunching beneath the keel. Bjorn jumped onto the beach, scanning the surroundings. Strange birds called from the treetops, and the scent of unfamiliar plants filled the air. The men disembarked cautiously, shields raised, eyes alert for signs of hostile inhabitants. Even in peaceful moments, vigilance was necessary. What seemed calm could hide deadly traps or rival clans waiting to strike. Exploration began carefully. Bjorn and a small group ventured inland, marking their path to avoid getting lost. The forest was dense, sunlight filtering through thick leaves. Every sound, the rustle of animals, the snap of branches, kept them tense. Bjorn's mind cataloged each detail: potential resources, hidden dangers, and possible routes back to the ship. Knowledge of the land would determine survival and success. By midday, they discovered a small village, its inhabitants wary but curious. The Vikings approached slowly, hands raised in gesture of peace. Bjorn studied their expressions, noting differences in clothing, tools, and speech. Communication would be difficult, yet trade, alliances, or even learning from these strangers could benefit their clan. The encounter was a delicate balance of diplomacy and caution, a reminder that courage alone did not ensure victory. As evening fell, Bjorn's group returned to the longship, carrying small gifts and news of the village. The men shared stories and observations, debating strategies for future interactions. The shore glimmered in the twilight, promising new adventures, challenges, and the unknown. Bjorn felt a surge of excitement, realizing that the sea had delivered them not just to land, but to the beginning of new tales that would one day be told around fires in Skjoldheim. The next morning, Bjorn and a few men returned to the village, carrying gifts meant to show goodwill. The foreign villagers eyed them warily, hands hovering near tools and weapons. Bjorn stepped forward, bowing slightly in respect, offering finely carved wooden figurines. Language barriers made communication slow, but gestures and shared meals began to ease tension. Diplomacy, he knew, could prevent bloodshed even in the most precarious situations. Despite efforts at peace, misunderstandings arose. A young Viking accidentally trampled a prized herb garden, and the villagers reacted with loud protests. Tension escalated, eyes narrowing, hands tightening on clubs. Bjorn raised his hands, speaking firmly yet calmly, signaling restraint. Conflict, he knew, could erupt in an instant. He relied on careful observation, reading body language, tone, and movement to gauge the next step. Bjorn proposed a compromise. The Vikings would repair the garden and offer additional gifts of dried meat and salted fish. Slowly, the villagers accepted, their expressions softening. Negotiation was not about weakness but strategy, about turning potential hostility into trust. Bjorn felt pride in the way his clan responded, understanding that the mark of a true warrior was measured as much in wisdom and patience as in strength and skill. As evening fell, the foreign village shared their customs, inviting the Vikings to observe their rituals and daily practices. Bjorn learned small lessons in agriculture, crafting, and local folklore. The exchange built mutual respect, forming bonds that could benefit both communities. The longship anchored nearby, ready for departure, yet for now, Bjorn appreciated the unexpected education and the reminder that even in distant lands, diplomacy and courage must go hand in hand. Night came, and the crew gathered around a small fire on the shore, recounting the day's challenges. Bjorn reflected on the balance of risk and reward, realizing that adventure was as much about forging alliances as it was about conquest. The firelight danced across his face, echoing the lessons of both the sea and the shore, imprinting memories that would shape his path and the stories he would one day share with his own clan. Dawn broke over the foreign shore as Bjorn and his crew prepared the longship for departure. The villagers waved from the beach, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and farewell. The wind filled the sail, carrying them smoothly into open waters. Bjorn felt a mix of relief and accomplishment. The voyage had tested them physically, mentally, and morally. Every decision, from navigation to diplomacy, had shaped the outcome of their journey. The sea was calmer than on their way out, yet Bjorn remained vigilant. Each wave reminded him of the storm they had endured, and the men rowed with steady rhythm, conscious that complacency could be deadly. He scanned the horizon constantly, eyes alert for sudden changes in weather or the distant shape of unknown vessels. The lessons of survival and observation were as important as any sword or shield they carried. Conversations drifted toward home. Men speculated about how their clan would receive tales of the voyage, the wealth they had gathered, and the friendships forged with foreign villagers. Bjorn felt a swell of pride, realizing that every small act, respecting the village, careful navigation, disciplined rowing, contributed to the honor of Skjoldheim. The longship was not just a vessel, it was a bridge between worlds, carrying stories and lessons as surely as it carried supplies. By evening, the coastline of their homeland appeared, familiar and comforting. The fjord's waters glimmered in the fading sunlight, reflecting the longhouse chimneys and pine-covered slopes. Bjorn's heart lifted, eager to see family, share tales, and rest after weeks at sea. Yet he also felt a twinge of longing. The open water, the thrill of the unknown, had left a lasting imprint. Adventure was intoxicating, and he knew it would call again. As the longship approached the docks, villagers gathered to greet them with cheers and curious eyes. Bjorn stepped onto solid ground, muscles aching but spirit renewed. The journey had been perilous and enlightening, testing every skill he possessed. Yet he carried home more than provisions. He brought back wisdom, stories, and the understanding that a Viking's life was defined not only by battles fought but by courage, honor, and the bonds forged along the way. The village erupted in celebration as Bjorn and his crew returned. Fires were lit, drums beat, and the scent of roasting meat filled the air. Children ran among the adults, laughing and pointing at the treasures brought from distant lands. Bjorn felt a swell of pride and relief. The long voyage had tested their limits, yet now, surrounded by familiar faces, the hardships seemed distant, replaced by joy and the warmth of home. Elders and warriors gathered around the central fire, listening intently as Bjorn recounted the journey. Tales of storms, foreign villages, and the careful diplomacy that had avoided bloodshed captivated his listeners. Every detail, every small act of courage, was preserved in his words. The clan absorbed these lessons eagerly. Experience and knowledge flowed from one generation to the next, ensuring that the spirit of adventure and wisdom would endure. Feasts lasted late into the night, with music, laughter, and storytelling. Bjorn sat beside Eric, sharing a quiet moment amid the celebration. The longship rested at the dock, oars and sails secured, a symbol of accomplishment. Bjorn reflected on the bond between his crew, the importance of trust and skill, and the delicate balance between bravery and prudence. These were the true treasures of a Viking, beyond gold or distant lands. As the revelry continued, Bjorn found a moment to step outside, gazing at the fjord under the silver light of the moon. Waves lapped gently against the shore, whispering promises of future voyages. He felt the pulse of the sea within himself, a reminder that adventure and discovery were eternal companions. For a Viking, the horizon always beckoned, and every ending carried the seed of a new beginning. Lying in his longhouse later, Bjorn replayed the day's events in his mind. Triumphs, challenges, and lessons mingled, forming a tapestry of experience. He understood that life was a series of journeys, each shaping body, mind, and spirit. Sleep finally claimed him, dreams filled with waves, distant shores, and the enduring call of the sea. The day had ended, but the Viking's story, his story, would continue. The morning after the celebration, Bjorn rose early to inspect the village fields. Winter would come soon, and every seed, every furrow mattered. He helped repair fences, checked traps, and guided younger warriors in planting and tending crops. Work was laborious, yet rewarding. Survival depended on preparation and knowledge passed down from elders. Every task reinforced patience, strength, and the quiet power of diligence. Bjorn's thoughts drifted to the foreign shore he had visited. He remembered the villagers' careful techniques in farming and crafting. Sharing knowledge became a silent mission. He planned to introduce some methods to Skjoldheim. Progress, he realized, came not only from conquest but from learning and adaptation. The land itself was a teacher, offering lessons in resilience, timing, and harmony with nature's rhythms. By midday, the village buzzed with activity. Children carried firewood, women churned butter, and men sharpened tools. Bjorn guided apprentices in practical tasks, demonstrating skillful use of axes and knives. The day reinforced the interconnectedness of every role in the clan. Warriors were not only fighters, they were farmers, builders, and teachers. Survival required unity, and Bjorn felt the pride of belonging to a community that thrived through cooperation and knowledge. Afternoon brought sparring and martial exercises. Bjorn took his sword and shield, practicing strikes, parries, and footwork. Each movement demanded precision and mental focus. Younger warriors watched closely, mimicking his stance and rhythm. Training was never just physical. It taught discipline, awareness, and respect for both weapon and opponent. Failure could mean death, but mastery brought confidence in survival. Bjorn sparred with Eric, clashing steel in a rhythm familiar from years of practice. Sweat dripped, muscles ached, yet each strike reinforced instinct and intuition. Conversation was minimal, focus ruled. The clang of weapons echoed across the village, mingling with the calls of birds and distant ocean waves. Even routine practice carried intensity, a preparation for the unpredictable perils that defined a Viking's life. By evening, training ended with the clan sharing a modest meal. Bjorn reflected on the day, learning, teaching, and preserving skills. Knowledge of combat, seamanship, and land was not just personal, it belonged to the community. A true Viking cultivated both body and mind, understanding that strength without wisdom was fleeting. Each lesson absorbed today would save lives tomorrow. Night fell, and the longhouse filled with the scent of burning pine. Elders called the young warriors to the hearth to share stories of ancestors. Bjorn listened intently as tales of distant raids, cunning battles, and heroic voyages unfolded. Every story held wisdom, strategy, courage, and the consequences of pride or carelessness. These legends guided their daily life, reminding each Viking that they were part of a lineage larger than themselves. Bjorn contributed his own experiences from the recent voyage. Tales of storms, foreign villages, and delicate negotiations captivated his peers. He emphasized lessons learned: respect for strangers, patience under pressure, and the balance of courage with caution. Storytelling was education, not mere entertainment. Every word shaped the clan's identity, passing knowledge and values from one generation to the next. The fire's glow danced across faces, young and old, weaving shadows with memory. Bjorn realized that these moments defined life as much as raids or journeys. The past was alive, a guide to the present. He understood that honor was measured not just in battle, but in daily choices, actions, and respect for the bonds connecting all members of the clan. As dawn approached, Bjorn inspected the longship once more. Supplies were replenished, sails repaired, and oars polished. Adventure had left its mark on him. He was stronger, wiser, and more aware of both the dangers and opportunities beyond the fjord. Future voyages awaited, with the promise of trade, exploration, and encounters with distant lands. Preparation was key. A journey began long before leaving shore. He gathered the young warriors, instructing them in navigation, knot tying, and observation of the stars. Each lesson ensured the clan's continued survival and success. Bjorn reflected on the recent voyage. Storms endured, lessons learned, and the delicate art of diplomacy. Every detail would shape future decisions, and every Viking under his guidance grew more capable, more ready for the unpredictable world beyond the fjord. By evening, the village settled into quiet anticipation. Bjorn walked the docks, staring at the longship silhouetted against the moonlit waters. Dreams of distant shores and uncharted lands filled his mind. He felt the pulse of the sea within him, an eternal call. For a Viking, the horizon was never a limit but a promise. Each journey, each challenge, and each triumph was a step in the continuing saga of life, courage, and legacy. The first light of dawn touched Skjoldheim once more. Bjorn stood at the edge of the fjord, the longship resting quietly at the docks. The village stirred with familiar sounds, children laughing, roosters crowing, smoke curling from chimneys. He breathed deeply, feeling the weight and the reward of all his experiences. The sea had tested him, the land had taught him, and the clan had strengthened him. He reflected on the voyages, the storms, and the foreign lands he had seen. Every challenge had left its mark, every lesson etched into memory. Bjorn understood now that a Viking's life was measured not only in battles won or lands explored but in the courage, wisdom, and respect one carried home. Strength without honor, he knew, was meaningless. A legacy was built with patience, skill, and the bonds shared with others. The villagers gathered as he walked back toward the longhouse. Elders nodded in approval, children followed curiously, and fellow warriors clapped him on the shoulder. Bjorn shared quiet advice, stories, and laughter, passing down knowledge he had gained. Each word, each gesture, strengthened the clan. Their lives were interwoven with his experiences, and together they carried the lessons of the past and the promise of the future. As the sun climbed, Bjorn gazed at the horizon, waves glinting like silver. The sea's call remained in his heart, a reminder that adventure and discovery were eternal companions. But for now, he was home. He felt contentment, knowing he had faced the world, returned wiser, and left a legacy for his clan. Every journey, every battle, and every dawn had shaped him, forging not just a warrior but a storyteller, a teacher, and a guardian of Skjoldheim. That night, as Bjorn lay in his longhouse, he listened to the wind whispering through the pine trees and the distant lap of waves. Dreams of distant shores mingled with memories of home. He smiled, knowing that life as a Viking was never about endings but the continuation of stories, courage, and the unbroken pursuit of honor. The horizon awaited, and so did countless adventures yet to come.